All right, my teacher friends, even the lovers and haters of rhetorical analysis among thee, Kristian Kuhn coming at you again, affectionately known as the Bob Ross of composition. And up my sleeve today, I got something really cool. I'm going to spotlight a discussion modality that I invented way back many years ago, earlier in my career, called a Plato's Play-Doh discussion. And for those that aren't familiar with it, it's a gamified edutainment approach towards discussion that basically combines like all the good elements of the Socratic seminar, the Harkness discussion, and the fishbowl, but you have this twist of gamification with it. And for pure entertainment purposes, we are going to explore the rhetoric of Taylor Swift. And what I have in terms of the text is an open letter that she wrote to Apple Music, and we'll also take a look at her 2023 re-release prologue to the album 1989. And if you want access to those texts, just look in the description below. They are there for you, as are all the slides that you're going to see forthcoming in this demonstration. Before I jump in and get into the meat and potatoes of what we're going to do, please subscribe to the channel. It's called Kristian Kuhn, the Bob Ross of composition. We just exceeded the 20,000 subscriber mark this week, and that delights me. We're growing fast, and I love it. So spread the word to colleagues, friends, students, and sit back and watch us grow over the days, weeks, months, and years to come. So let me explain the impetus behind this Plato's Play-Doh discussion. Early in my career, I noticed that I was doing something that Theodore Sizer actually gave me the coinage for it. It's called wagon wheeling. And this is what I mean by that analogy. So teacher poses question. We're at the center of the wagon wheel hub. It goes out to one student. Student responds, comes back to us. We pose another question, goes to another student, comes back to us. And it resembles, in terms of a metaphoric analogy for that, a wagon wheel. And it's really not an effective discourse mode in the classroom. And I found that with Socratic seminars, fishbowls, Harkness discussions, that I always invariably ended up wagon wheeling. And I don't know what your experience is, but that was mine. And I think one of the, downfalls of my early teaching career was I was not good at facilitating discussions. I did not have much training in that in my practicum. And lo and behold, I decided to gamify things. And that's what a Plato's Play-Doh discussion is. But there's also another kicker to this. In a Plato's Play-Doh discussion, the questions by and large aren't generated by me, and I'm going to qualify that. Early in the school year, they are, because I have to model for students how to ask the good, pithy, juicy questions. But after a while, I take the scaffolds and the training wheels down and off, and the students are creating their own questions. And what you'll see for these two texts is kind of a blend or a mix of my questions with student questions. And often what I do with student questions is I just clean up the language of them and make them more exacting than their verbiage and how they word things. So let me explain how I gamified these two texts for you. In my classroom, I have a magnetic tic-tac-toe board that looks just like this, and we put it on my whiteboard, and I split the class into two teams, X's and O's. The X's make their questions based on the text, the O's theirs. I gather the questions, and then I just dole out the questions, and winner gets the X or winner gets the O. And I'm kind of the game show host, and I help students facilitate that discussion and deem whether or not a question's been thoroughly unpacked and addressed, etc. And I also kind of, ensure that the students get their nose in the text and keep everything very text-based. So that's one way in which you can gamify it. And I'll give you a couple of other flavors of things that I do. So I often use things like Connect 4 if there are a lot of questions, and students created a lot of questions for both of these texts. And again, I'll split the teams into yellow and red, and we just gamify with the Connect 4, the traditional rules of Connect 4. In the Facebook groups, the Jenga game piece is wildly popular, and I use colored Jenga to do that, and basically the colors have different point values, and we base it on the difficulty level of the question. So I'll have purple questions, green questions, blue questions, and just arrange them on difficulty. And then if I want smaller groups in a really fast-paced discussion, I can use something like Hungry Hungry Hippos, in which I'll have an orange, pink, yellow, and green team. The amount of marbles that are gobbled by the team determines the point value and the difficulty of the question. So just a few ways in which we gamify the discussion. So what I'm going to do is show you the open letter that Taylor Swift wrote to Apple Music, and I'll show you the questions that some of them are mine and some of them are my students, but I'll show you the questions that we came up with so that you can see the complexity at which we're tearing apart a text. I think it's very illuminating to see how my students do this, and I think in turn they become really good readers, and it translates into their writing as well when we start talking about things like complexity. It all hinges upon the complexity of the reading. That comes first and foremost. So I'll go through the questions and kind of talk you through the process here. So the first question states this: Swift's letter commences with a simultaneous greeting salutation as well as with a complimentary close, which is known as a valediction. How does this create meaning in the work as a whole? Further, what is her intent in doing so? So that was my question. My students kind of missed that in reading, but it's kind of a weird thing. She's got a beginning and a closing in that greeting salutation line, which is rather bizarre way to begin a letter. So we had to analyze that and grapple with that, which was very interesting to hear students unpack that. Question number 2 goes like this: Swift's appeal to Apple is written syllogistically, but note how her first sentence states her thesis. So it's declarative, the conclusion of the syllogism. Why do this? How does this create meaning in the work as a whole? And this question might not serve some of you all that well unless you're using my heuristics, so you know that my students, when they write, especially for rhetorical analysis, they do declarative thesis. For literary analysis, they do inverted thesis heuristic. And then for argument, persuasion, synthesis, and research, it's a coin flip between the inverted and the declarative. And all body paragraphs are written syllogistically, which is an Aristotelian heuristic that we use. So I noted that observation in terms of how, on a rhetorical level, Swift sets up her argument, and just wanted my students to tussle with that a little bit. And again, make those observations are great, especially when they get into the logos of the piece. So question 3 is a lot easier. It says, Swift matter-of-factly commences the third paragraph with, "This is not about me." What does this do in terms of establishing her ethos? So with this question, we also got into the fact that syntactically she uses a lot of short, simple declarative sentences, a lot of independent clauses, and that intersects with the development of her ethos as well. I love it when my students can combine terms, devices, techniques together to get at the construction of meaning. Number 4. The first 6 sentences begin with the singular pronoun I. That's a great observation. An exacting editor would say tisk tisk to this. But why might Swift take such rhetorical liberties? Again, I asked that question. None of my students picked that up. But I know, and you probably as well, if a student began 6 consecutive sentences with I, we'd probably be like, why all this parallelism? You can't do that. So skip to number 5. In the first paragraph, in spite of withholding her album from the platform, Swift lauds Apple. Why take this rhetorical strategy? Number 6. Again, an exacting editor would probably chide a writer for over-relying on the short, simple declarative sentence. Concerning the second paragraph, why does Swift ignore this rule? And again, this, syntax is tough for kids to learn and read to be like real good syntactical ninjas at reading level. So I really get their nose in that with these questions. And that was my question. Students didn't see it when they worked in groups to formulate the questions. Number 7, I spy with my little eye the use of anaphora. These are. Great observation, so what? And that's something that I say to my students all the time. Great, you made the observation, but so what? How does it construct meaning? What's the authorial intent? Number 8, Swift mentions that those she's speaking on behalf of might be afraid. Why? Right? And you can tussle with these. It's pretty obvious. You don't need a playbook for this. And then number 9, the one solution Swift proposes is for Apple to cover the 3 months of royalty payments. Unpack her logic. Further, how does this audacious request intersect with her ethos? Yeah, rather bold to say, hey, you pay for it. It's your policy, your platform. You eat the cost of it, not the artist. I thought that was pretty cool. So those are the questions we posed for the open letter to Apple. Let's skip to the Prologue 1989 album, the 2023 re-release. And again, these are going to be more student-based than the first text that we looked at. And you can see the difference. There's kind of a drop-off, but that's why, we're the facilitators. We're the teachers. We got to help out with this. So number 1, there are infinite and endless ways to launch into a narrative. Yet Swift chose to focus on a haircut she received at age 24. Why is this significant, and how does this add meaning to the work as a whole? Number 2, what does the following reveal about Swift's ethos? And it's just the quote. The voice that had begun to shame me in new ways for dating like a normal young woman, I wanted to silence them. And I added another question about that sentence, which is going to come up in just a second. Number 3, the following rhetorical question is written as a fragment. Great observation. So what? And then that line we just looked at. And note that it's a fragment, right? Kids got to pick up on that stuff. That's all intentional. Number 4, while Swift is a role model for young women, she nevertheless admits that she had to make it stop because it was starting to really hurt. Assess and analyze her tactic as it pertains to her ethos. Number 5, juxtapose the harsh moral codes of the Victorian era to Swift's reaction. What does this suggest about her on a human level and on a personal level as well? I really like that question. So kids are coming up with some good insights here. Number 6, analyze and interpret the second employment of a rhetorical question. What is Swift's intent, and how does this create meaning in the work as a whole? So you can see a pattern here. My students are really accustomed to getting to authorial intent and construction of meaning, because that's essential when we use the declarative thesis heuristic for our introductory paragraphs. To really hammer home the thesis, we have to answer those 2 questions. Skipping to number 7. Swift suggests that she had a demeanor as trusting as a basket of golden retriever puppies. Establishment of ethos, what does that do to the ethos with that admittance? Number 8, Swift suggests that with regard to this epoch of her life, she had the right kind of naivety. Unpack what she means from a logical perspective, right? There's a big syllogism in that admittance, and I want my kids to tussle and grapple with that a little bit. Number 9, Swift juxtaposes her innocence to a cocktail of naivety and some nasty hangovers. Unpack this comparison, right? So why are we making alcohol references here in light of that disclosure? Number 10, I spy with my little eye a paragraph with a ton of anaphora. What's the rhetorical significance of this in terms of constructing meaning in the piece as a whole? And then lastly, number 11, Swift references her hit song, Shake It Off. Explain the pathos, explain the illusion, right? All cool stuff. So here's what we do in terms of our activity and our classroom setup. We've thoroughly unpacked these texts. And what I want my students to do is write an essay based on another one of Taylor Swift's pieces of writing. And what we did was this. her NYU commencement address from this past year. And I've already made this writing workshop. It is in my YouTube channel. You can check it out. And in this video, I walk students and teachers through, I think 3 or 4 times, how to do the declarative thesis. And I wrote all the exemplars and models, so you'll be looking at my writing. And it completely demystifies the process of how to use a heuristic. And after students see it 3 or 4 times, teachers usually pause the video and say, on your marks, get set, go. And they're good. I unpack how to do it. They can just follow my lead a la Bob Ross and rock and roll. From there, we get into the body paragraphs, and I introduce something called the syllogistic method. And I go really slow in the modeling and the Bob Rossing of this. And we just go first premise, second premise, conclusion, and bang out a couple body paragraphs together. And then for, good measure, I show students how to tag a conclusion paragraph on the end of that essay. So that is already recorded and in my YouTube channel if you want to use it. All right, I'm signing off. Happy teaching, happy writing. I hope you found this to be useful. If you have any questions or need to reach out to me, you can send me an email at teachingwritingcoach@gmail.com. I always respond to my email, so don't be trigger shy in terms of reaching out to me. I actually enjoy hearing from teachers and students. Also note, I'm a lead teacher for the National Writing Project. And we do professional development throughout the calendar year. I also do webinars here and there for perfection learning, applied practice. Last 3 years, I've been presenting with NCTE, the College Board. So I got a little calendar of events up there at teachinghowtowrite.com. Most of the PD is free. Some is for a nominal fee. So just go to teachinghowtowrite.com and give a browse. And again, hit me up if you have any questions. Students who may be watching this, or teachers, if you have students who you'd like to recommend. I own my own tutoring company. It's called Write at Ivy Write. I'm an Ivy League graduate. I did all my graduate degrees at Ivy League schools. I even worked admissions at Brown. So for those students who want to get over the hurdle of writing really good personal statements and supplements, hit me up. I can get you through that process. I have done that for many, many years. And speaking of many, many years, I've been teaching Lang and Lit for over 2 decades. So if you need an extra booster shot, in terms of preparing for the exam, drop me an email and we can talk specifics. That's it from here. That was a fun one. I really enjoyed doing that. My students loved it, and